I'm Mark Berry with Done Training, and in this demonstration we're going to show you how to create and use control templates. To begin, let's create a new project. This is going to be a C# Windows application, WPF application, and I'm going to call it Control Templates. You may have heard WPF controls called lookless. What that's trying to imply is that the look of the control isn't actually stored with the control. It's got a template to it. Really, the functionality is what's stored with the control, and the look of the control can be changed by a style or something else. So let's change this grid. I want to use a stack panel instead. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a checkbox, and we'll go ahead and set a few of the checkbox's properties. This is the control that we're going to create a control template for. Make it aquamarine. Alright, and we'll give it a little content. Alright, so there's our checkbox ready to be templated. You can see that we have a little aquamarine checkbox here, and if we were to run this, we could check it and would change the icon to have a little check in there. Okay, and we want to change not something small. If we just want to make a small visual change to this, we would use something like styles, but we want to make a large visual change to this, sort of throw out how it currently handles the look and make it something completely different. And that's what we're going to do with our control template. So let's start by creating a stack panel resource. We could also do this with the template directly in the checkbox, but if we do it outside in some sort of resource, we can reuse this and use it with several different checkboxes, which we'll see at the end. And the next thing we want to do is add a control template. Now, this control template, we need to give it a name. So let's give it a key value here. And I'll call this my checkbox template. Now, this checkbox template, just so I don't forget, is what I want to apply to my checkbox down here. So let's go ahead and tell it which template to use. That comes from a static resource called checkbox template. Okay, so now we've hooked those two up. We also may want to tell it what kind of template we're creating. And I should case that class correctly. Alright, and now we're ready to replace how it draws the template. You can see that it's already replaced it up here in our window, and since I don't have anything for the content of the template, there's nothing up here. It's not showing the checkbox or the question anymore. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a canvas for this. Sort of a container so I can put multiple things in it. And I want to go ahead and I want to set the background. Now, when I set the background, I could tell it specifically what background to use, but what I want to do is I want to tell it to use the background that actually came from the checkbox. And you should really do this with all of the properties so that they map, so that something, if somebody sets this, they expect it to have some sort of effect on the look. So if somebody set aquamarine background, we really want our control to in some way show that aquamarine background if that's appropriate. So I want to go ahead and map that, and the way I do this is with something called template binding. So I want to say template binding. And then I want to tell it how to bind that, and I'm going to bind it to the background. Alright, and there'll be a couple of other things I want to do, but let's go ahead and do that. And you can see now that it's using the background from the checkbox, which it wasn't a minute ago, in the background for the canvas. So we've done that appropriately. Let's bind one more property as well. We'll go ahead and bind the height, just to show you that. Alright, so that's now binding both the height and the background. Okay, so there's our canvas, and now we might want to put something inside of this canvas that was our new look. So we've got somewhere to sort of draw on now, and we want to put something inside of that. The thing I'm going to replace the checkbox with is just a text block. So let's get a text block, and I want to use the text property. Now, what I want to put in for the text property of this text block is I want to put in another template binding. So we don't just have to use the template binding with the container control. The template binding can go in several different places, and in fact we can reuse the same property if we want, and grab height, for instance, and we could put height in here if we wanted to for the text. As long as the data types match, it'll work. So what we really want here, though, is we want a template binding, and that template binding is going to be for the content. So we're trying to get the question out into this text block. There we go. Now it says, how about a nice game of chess? So we're picking out the properties and we're putting them in what we call the appropriate place. So let's see. I also want another text blocks here. And this is going to be used for something different. I'm going to need a name to this one, so let's give this a name to this object. Now, you should know that this name is not universal. I won't be able to refer to this in code. This is really just named so that I can use it later within my control template. Okay, so it's not universally named, not available in code. If I wanted to get it in code, I could refer to the control template and then do find a named object here within the template control. So let's go ahead and call it X. Be sort of generic. You'll see why in a second. Now, this text block is actually going to be our effect. What the effect we're going to go for is we're going to put X's over this. So if it's checked, then we put X's over it. If it's not checked, then we don't put the X's over it. So that's what we're going to do. So let me go ahead and put in the text property that I want, which is just going to be a couple of X's to sort of X out whatever the value is. And I'll go ahead and set the font size as well. So it's nice big X's. We'll set it something like 24. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the opacity at half or something. This is just going to let me see it while I'm doing the work. I'll go ahead and take that out when we're all done. Okay, and that's the end of our text block. Okay, so you can see that that's the sort of the effect we're going for, the sort of X out of the question mark there. Now, let's go ahead and move that up. It's a little bit off. To move it up, I'll use the attach property for canvas, and we'll set it to something like -5, and that'll move it up a little bit so it's better centered. All right, so there's our X's. Now, the effect we want is that when I check the box, it puts the X's on. When I don't check the box, it takes the X's off. So what we want to do is we want to hook up to that property. So the other thing we can do is we can come in here and we can say, I want control template dot triggers. This says, when the following gets set, I want some action to be taken. So in our control template triggers, I'm going to set up a trigger, and that trigger is going to be for the property called checkbox dot is checked. So if the property checkbox dot is checked is changed, then this is what I want to happen. And if it's changed to, if its value is changed to true, then I want to set, there's a setter, and I want to set the property called opacity to a value of 1. Now, the only thing we're missing here is it doesn't know whose opacity to set. And that's actually why we named this X previously. So what we want to do is we want to tell it what the target name is, and the target name is X. So those X's there, that's what we want to change. Okay, and that's really it. We probably also want to be able to uncheck it, so I'm going to copy that, paste it in, and when the value is false, I want to set the opacity to 0. Okay, we're going to go ahead and save and run that, and see if we can't get a templated control to work. Alright, and so now when we check it, we get the X's across. When we uncheck, no X's. That's a templated control.